Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. Please excuse how over the top my dress is today. I'm heading straight out to dinner after I'm filming this video, so I'm more fancy for once. It doesn't happen often, okay? Enjoy it. Today we are going to be looking at a discussion that I saw on Reddit, which is something that I see over and over again in my comment section and also in books that I read by a lot of fundies, by people like Classically Abby, Paul and Morgan Girl Defined. They always say, by people like Classically Abby, Paul and Morgan Girl Defined, they always say, no one ever regrets having kids. And as child-free people are like, yeah, they do. So in today's video, there was a thread on Reddit that asked people, do any of you, specifically women over 30, do any of you regret having children? And today we're going to be looking at some of those responses. Now, very quickly before we start, I just want to make it very clear, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Some people are going to regret having kids, some people are not going to regret it and they're going to love it. Some people are going to love not having kids, and some people are going to regret not having kids. Everything is different for every single person. There's no right or wrong way to live your life, and just because one person regrets something doesn't mean everyone will. And that's kind of what I want to get across in this video today. Just because you enjoy having kids, that doesn't mean everyone feels the same. And just because some people regret them, it doesn't mean everyone will. But looking at examples like this does mean we can understand other people's perspectives. And maybe by understanding that there are people out there who have regretted having kids, it might help you understand a little bit more about why there are some of us out there who don't want to have them at all. This person said, my kid is 25 now and honestly I don't know I'd do it again. It's hard and my life went on hold for years. Ended up divorced and had to start over. My ex continued to grow financially and career-wise. I started over, and while I'm in a good place now, it was so hard. I love my kid and I'm happy I had her when I was young and full of optimism. At 45, I've got friends just starting out with kids and most of them are very unhappy. It is non-stop work. Daycare is outrageous, medical care is disgustingly expensive, their bodies have long-term issues from pregnancy. You'll have to find a new definition of fun. That's something that'll be true no matter if your kids end up happy or healthy. Your time isn't yours anymore, and everything you enjoy doing isn't going to fit in your tight, endless schedule. At least people in the comments are being realistic. Unfortunately, it's almost like women aren't allowed to voice or even have unfavourable opinions on parenting. For a woke society, we're still very much against women speaking out about the realities of unhappy parents. And I think this is the bit that made me really interested in this comment, because I think she's right. I think there's far more stigma towards women who say we don't want kids, or we regret having kids, or we found such and such an aspect of pregnancy or child rearing difficult and so on. I think especially when you get a lot of fundies pushing this idea that it's natural for women to want to be mothers, it's natural to be good parents and blah blah. Like, no. It's absolutely not natural for everyone. I think whether you're a good parent or not comes down to who you are as an individual, your interests, your patience, how good you are with kids in general, how much you relate to them and understand them. There's a hell of a lot that goes into it. And I think to say that all women have those skills is just so stupid, to put it politely, you know? And I think it's good that there are women like this who are saying, hey, you know what, I love my kid, but I did find this hard. I found this hard and I found this hard. I think we need to listen to those women a bit more and reduce the stigma around them being so open about that sort of thing. I also found this one interesting because she brought up the difference between her and her husband when she had a kid. Her career was on hold, her financial growth was on hold because she had to take time off for pregnancy, and then when they divorced, she was the one left with the kid. I know a lot of men's rights activists say things like, oh, family courts favour women, it's awful, men need more rights. But when it comes down to it, that also puts a lot of women at a disadvantage because if courts are more likely to give full or main custody to women, that means that they still take on the bulk of the childcare responsibilities. That means they still have a huge financial burden, the burden of time and looking after their kids. It's a very big emotional drain, and a lot of those women do have to put their careers on hold where men don't have to. Obviously not true for every family, but just speaking very generally, it's something to kind of consider and understand that, yeah, it's okay to be upset about that, you know? This woman, when asked, said, it's very hard to say no even in an anonymous place like Reddit, and especially in real life, so I think you'll get skewed responses. I love my kids so much and I couldn't go back and erase them, but I don't think parenting was the right choice for me. I have twins who are 10 now, and to be honest, it broke me. physically, financially, mentally. It's been incredibly difficult and is still a lot of time, and still is a lot of the time. My marriage didn't survive it, and I think I'm only semi-able to cope because he's a great dad and we share childcare equally. Which, the end bit is a nice refreshing thing to read, with a man taking on that much of the responsibility as well. Really, really great. But I do find it interesting that all of these women who talk about how difficult parenting is all preface it with, I love my kids, but, as though they need to reassure us of that, or they're going to be accused of not loving their kids enough, not being a good enough parent. Just because you find something hard, that doesn't make you a bad parent, you know? This person I found really interesting because she replied to the above commenter and said, I feel this. I love my kids, but between this world and my mental health issues, which I didn't fully figure out until later in life, on top of how hard it is, if given the chance to go back and do it all again, not a chance. I would live 100% child-free life and do my best to be the best person I can without having to worry about possibly messing up my kids or adding any burdens to this world. Plus the years with my ex of attempting to co-parent with. No. I'm so glad we're actually friends now though, but Jesus Christ, did my kids go through some poop. And this again was a big thing that I saw. So many people saying, well, I wouldn't get rid of my kids now, I wouldn't have raised them now, but if I could go back, yeah, probably choose not to do it for various reasons. Now, another thing that might be easy to say is that, like, oh, well, these people regretting it probably didn't want to be mothers enough in the first place. They didn't want it enough. But that's not always the case. One person here replied to another commenter and asked, I'm sorry being a parent was so hard for you. If you don't mind me asking, did you always want to be a mother, or were you on the fence before you took the plunge? And two different people responded with, I always did, and I regret it. And the other person said, I wanted it, but not always. I was on the fence until I got to my late 20s and got very broody. Cured of that now, I would never have another. So, completely different experiences for these two women. One was like, yes, I always wanted to do this, and the other was like, I was on the fence, but did it anyway. Both of them ended up with regrets. That's kind of why I think we need to educate people on the realities of pregnancy and child rearing and what it's really like, and let people know there are other options, you know? For the woman on the fence, and, you know, she's saying, oh, I don't know, I got to my late 20s, I got broody, you know, and then I imagine there were also some societal pressures there on her, and maybe that pushed her into a decision that she didn't really want. Whereas with the other woman who always wanted it but ended up regretting it, it's difficult because maybe that's just a part of life, you know? People do things and they regret it. I've accepted job offers and then regretted it because I ended up not liking the job. Which I guess isn't as big a thing as having a kid and regretting it, but still, you know? Maybe if she'd have been a little bit more aware of what child rearing was actually going to be like, she would have had a different opinion. Maybe if she was more informed, she'd have had a different opinion. Maybe not. I don't know. It's difficult to tell. A lot of women said things like, yeah, I'd want my kid, just not with the partner I ended up with. This person says, I would have had her, just not with my ex, but then I wouldn't have had her and she's my world. Which again is something I find interesting. It seems that a lot of people regret who they chose to co-parent with rather than actually having a kid themselves, which I think is quite interesting. And again, I think a lot of this might come down to societal pressures. There's so much pressure on people, get married, have kids, get married, have kids, or just have kids before your fertility drops too low. Have them as soon as you can with the first person you can, just do it, have kids. Some people don't really take the time to find the right partner and figure out who is going to be someone you actually want to build your life with and who is someone you could actually raise a family with, you know? Or some people who might be anti-choice and kind of pro-forced pregnancy and stuff might end up staying with people who just accidentally got them pregnant because they don't want to abort at this time and try and get pregnant later. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of facets to this. I just think the amount of women I saw in this thread talking about how they regretted their partners rather than their kids was very revealing to me, and it kind of makes me think, well, again, maybe these are the conversations we need to be having. How do we figure out how to find the right partner to have a kid with? Not just, how do I find out how to have a kid? And I say this in not like a victim blamey way at all, but in a way of saying, okay, how do we have these conversations to make things better for the next generation, you know? How do we make sure the next people don't make these same mistakes, or how do we reduce their chances of that, you know? This person was interesting. They said, going back in time, I'd probably only have one. One's so easy compared with two. You can easily travel with them, one kid fits into your world. And again, I kind of feel like this is maybe something that a lot of fundy content creators really push, this idea of you need to go forth and multiply, have as many kids as possible, have your whole quiver full, you know? they push this idea of the more kids the better, the more kids the closer to God, the more kids the more love, the more kids the more fun, when in reality the more kids the more work. But from what I've heard from a lot of people, that work is exponential, you know? One kid adds this amount of work, 2 kids adds this amount of work, 3 kids adds this amount of work. You know, you couldn't see any of those on camera, but the point is, one more kid doesn't add the same amount of work as the first one. It's even more because of how difficult it is, and you're managing them both, and they're interacting, and there's so much to do, and also the toll that multiple pregnancies can take on your body is going to be even harder. And yeah, I feel very, very sorry for these people. This person linked to a whole subreddit called Regretful Parents, where apparently it's basically like a little support group for people to go and talk about like their regrets. They wish they hadn't been parents. They hate parenting, some of them. Some of them really, really struggle with various things. And yeah, it made me feel very, very sorry for them. This is something that I found really interesting because this person said, honestly, you don't know who you're going to get. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, you cannot encourage the behaviour you'd like. My child's not neurotypical, and I went to school to learn about it thinking it would help me parent if I knew enough. It wasn't nearly enough. You can't control another person ultimately. And this is something that I found really, really interesting because it's something that I've said before. I'm like, I know as a person, I don't think I could cope with a kid at all. But I absolutely know I could not cope with a kid that had certain like behavioral issues or health problems or stuff like that. I have my own stuff to deal with, and I know that like certain like sounds and textures and behaviors I can't deal with. So if a kid had certain health problems, I couldn't cope with that. I couldn't parent someone like that. And I feel like, you know, when you have a biological child or you adopt a baby, for example, you don't know who they're going to grow up to become. You can try and shape them, but ultimately you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if they're going to have health problems or anything like that. And I think if you're going to be a parent, you need to be prepared to parent whoever you get to the fullest. And I know I personally couldn't do that, which is just another reason I don't want to have any kid at all. Going back to the idea of like being on the fence and wanting kids or not, this person says that they were on the fence before they had kids. I learnt the hard way that if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. And this is something that I always feel like kind of guilty saying to people. I get a lot of people in the comments being like, oh, I'm kind of on the fence, I don't know, do you have any recommendations? And I'm like, if you're on the fence, don't do it. And it makes me sound really horrible, and it makes me sound like I'm this like anti-natalist child hating monster who's, you know, trying to encourage people to stop having babies and stuff. It's not that at all. But I do think parenting's something you have to go into completely and fully and want to do it and really put your all into, because as much as I don't want a kid myself, I do care about kids. And seeing people with poor parents upsets me, and I would never want to encourage someone to go into parenting if they're only gonna put half the effort in, if they don't think they can do it, if they're not sure they really want to do it, you know? This isn't like a meal at a restaurant where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I really want the chips. And then if you get them and you're not hungry, you can just leave them on the plate. You can't do that with a kid. If you're like, oh, I'm not sure, and then you have it anyway, you have this whole full person that you're responsible for looking after. And if you regret it, you risk damaging that kid. And that's not fair. So I think you need to be sure before you do anything. One of the final points I just want to look at under this question is from this woman who, and again we're going back to the larger burden being on mothers than fathers generally. Obviously these statements don't apply to same-sex couples, they'll have their own dynamics and stuff like that, but you know, just looking at these particular comments. This woman says, the workload falls on mothers and it narrows the scope of your life. If motherhood is your calling, that's totally different. I was on the fence. I also had a horrible pregnancy and developed postpartum anxiety. Even now, if anything happened to her, my life would be destroyed. I think about women I know with multiple kids or disabled kids, and I see how their lives are exponentially harder. Dads, sadly, are totally different. Even feminist dads. The expectations from society are just 1,000 times lower. I feel awful for saying all this. Mothers feel guilty for everything all the time though, so hit and post anyway. Someone actually replied to her saying, don't feel awful for saying that, and I agree, don't. Let's reduce the stigma around it. Let's get women talking about this stuff. Absolutely. From what you described, it's very difficult and it's fair for you to say so. You can love your daughter, but that doesn't change the fact that the whole situation was difficult. Conversely, the fact that the situation was difficult doesn't mar what you feel for her. Society places the burden on mum when it's actually society that's failing mothers. I think that's a very interesting and important point. I'd love to hear what you think of that. We do the best we can, but the deck is stacked against us. Damned if we do, damned if we don't. It's important to bring these experiences to light because if we don't, nothing will ever change. Completely agree there. In order to fix a problem, society first need to acknowledge that it exists. Mothers need support, childcare, or simply kindness and understanding. Society shouldn't have the privilege of our silence any longer. Love what that person said. I think it's brilliant. This person was really interesting though. They don't regret having kids at all. They absolutely love it. But there's something interesting here. This person says, F yeah, I'm having a great time. I was on the fence before and I'm so glad I did it. I was happy before and even happier now, which is great, good for them. I'm glad I waited until I was older though. I got my wiggles out beforehand, lots of travel, some career changes, entrepreneurship. I'm financially stable and have an amazing husband who is willing and happy to be a stay-at-home dad. She apparently had her first one at 35 and second at 37. And I find this so interesting because, again, so many people push this idea that you need to have babies as early as possible, okay? If you're 22, you're too old already. At least that's what Debbie Pearl says in her book that we were looking at in my last video. Which, of course, we all know is completely ridiculous. I think women like this who can acknowledge that they didn't know if they wanted them or not, so they got their life in order first, and they create a life where they could bring another life into it safely and securely and happily, and they had the skills to do that, they had the resources to do that, they picked the right partner, and it all came together for them, and I think that's really good and really commendable, and again, something we should be encouraging in others. Sort yourself out before you have kids. Don't feel there's this rush and pressure to just pop out babies as soon as possible, you know? I think that's where a lot of the problems and regret and struggles tend to arise, and again, not shaming anyone who has those struggles at all, but just saying if we can talk about these and give advice for future generations, maybe we can help people going forward. Now, I also wanted to show the other side of the equation, and as I was scrolling through Reddit this same day, I found a post that was basically the opposite, but over on No Stupid Questions. So a very different demographic of people in this subreddit, very aware of that. The other one was women over 30. This is everyone on Reddit, so it's probably going to be skewed more towards men and stuff like that, but this person asked, do you regret not having kids? And again, the same people who say, oh, no one regrets having kids, are the same people who say, oh, you'll regret not having them, you will, you really, really will. And again, I wanted to look through these posts to show that they're wrong. A lot of people don't, but also just look at different people's experiences in general. It starts off with a 63-year-old man who just says, I just never had the parenting urge. The joy in holding their baby that I see in others just didn't click for me. And I related to this so much because that's how I feel. I've never had that urge to want to hold a baby or be near a baby or like their company. I've never had that urge to be a parent. And it's nice to hear from older people who have been through it to know that that doesn't change and it's okay to feel this way, you know? It's just natural in some of us. Someone actually replied to him saying, I thank God every day for not having that parenting urge. Parents say all the time that parenthood is the hardest thing, but it's rewarding. Personally, I'm not sure I'm the type of person to find any reward in something that drains the life out of me. I completely relate to this. I hate that I've put so much effort into taking care of myself, and for the most part I don't even do it well because I know it only affects me. Having to wake up every day and do my best for kids and take care of them to the best of my ability would make me depressed. I've never in my entire life looked at a parent and envied their life. Even in the most perfect scenario, happy, healthy kids, amazing partner, financial security, parenthood still sounds like hell to me, and I swear this could have been written by me. I get it so much. Another example from someone says, 50, married over 20 years, no regrets. I had someone tell me my biological clock would start ticking when I was 30. I was 40 when they told me that. Bless her. Yeah, it's something that I'm getting told as well, and I literally recently wrote a poem about it called On Turning 30, and it's how everyone's telling me that I'm running out of time and better get working on those babies soon. The clock's gonna start ticking, my hormones are gonna start making me broody, and I'm like, I don't see it happening. I really, really don't. It's... yeah. I like this person who says, not for a single second. People kept telling me I would change my mind when I met Mr. Right. Guess what? I knew I'd met Mr. Right when his life plan didn't include children. This is how I feel about my partner now. I love our little lives just for ourselves, where we get to cherish each other and grow as people together, for each other. I like that my love is only for him and his for me. It creates a special bond. Nothing about motherhood ever appealed to me. I know I would be miserable in that role. When I was a kid and envisioned my future, I always pictured a husband but never children. The life I have now is perfect, exactly like my childhood dream. And again, I swear this could have been written by me because I relate to it so much and I get it. a lot of people comment on my videos saying like, but what if you meet a man who wants kids? And I'm like, well, then I won't date him. Simple as that. And it was a big thing that ended a lot of like dating experiences I had, because they were either on the fence or they decided they did want kids or stuff like that, and I was like, I can't do that. Or they were like, I can't be with someone who doesn't want them, when they realised I wasn't going to change my mind. And that was the thing. So when I met my partner that I have now, it was one of the earliest things we talked about. Like literally on the night we met at a writing group with like a whole bunch of mutual friends, and we just ended up chatting for hours. And one of the things that we spoke about was not wanting kids, and I was like, this guy's good, this guy's on the same page as me, I like this a lot. It's not about meeting someone and then changing your whole life to fit with like their view of the future. It's about finding someone whose view of the future aligns with yours. And both mine and his visions of the future align perfectly. We both want the same things, to go the same places, to achieve similar things that slot together nicely. Neither of us want kids. We both want to experience the same sort of things, and it works. Neither of us is gonna suddenly be like, oh, well now I've met a nice person, shall we pop out some babies? It doesn't work like that when you feel so uncomfortable with the idea of having a child, you know? This person said, I always thought I would eventually feel the urge to have kids. That urge never happened. Some people are just born to raise a family, but babies creep me out. The urge for independence and no one relying on me 24/7 were constant. I have 6 nieces and nephews, and now I have 3 grandnieces, so I don't ever feel like I missed out on anything. I can afford the occasional expensive vacation. I'm in a satisfying long-term relationship. I've got lots of friends who have and don't have kids. I've got pets, plants, hobbies, so I do enough nurturing. Nothing is lacking from my life. And I love this comment, this idea that they have a life filled with loving others, nurturing others, caring for others, but they can do that without it having to be their own kid. I love that. I think it's so important to talk about. Now, this is interesting because this was the first comment I saw on the thread from someone who actually said, yes, I regret not having kids, but there's a difference. This one says, yeah, big time regret. Lost my uterus to cancer last year, came out of absolutely nowhere. Now I wish every day that I'd had one when I had the chance. No periods is nice though. And I feel awful for them, of course, and I feel sorry, and I'm sad that they have regrets about it, but it sounds to me like someone who did want kids anyway and now can't. This isn't a person who's child-free. This is a person who's childless, and there's a difference. Child-free by choice, or child-free, is someone who chooses not to have kids and doesn't have them. A childless person is someone who wants kids but can't have them or doesn't have them. It's about wanting something and it being missing from your life, as opposed to child-free, which is about actively not wanting something in your life and therefore you don't have it. You know? There is a big difference. It's absolutely the same with this next person here. This person says, 38 male, yes. Structured my whole life to support a family of 4. Bought a 3-bedroom home, saved for two tuitions, budgeted for 1 international trip and a national trip a year. Bank called a year or 2 ago telling me the college fund matured. Sighed, quit my job, feel super lost. Now I'm an unemployed bum falling into a life of vice in a big empty apartment. Effing hate it, so empty. I don't know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. I regret all my life choices. And obviously I feel awful for this person. It's terrible. But again, this is someone who's childless, not child-free. They're not regretting a choice not to have kids. They're regretting that they never got the opportunity to have them when they clearly wanted them. Again, big difference from someone who's child-free, growing older, you know? If I had his life at 38, I would love it. That would make me feel so fulfilled. I mean, as long as I had all the other things in my life that made me fulfilled, like my hobbies and friends and career and stuff like that. But clearly he pinned all his hopes on one thing and couldn't get it. But I think what a lot of people who want kids fail to realise is that this, I guess, emptiness that he's feeling here and this regret he's feeling for wanting kids and planning for them and never having them. That is exactly what so many of us child-free people would feel like if we planned our life around not having kids. We tried to make that happen and then ended up being forced to have them anyway. We would feel the same way that he feels now, because it's not about if there's kids in your life or not. It's about our goals and aims and values being fulfilled or not. You know? So I feel awful for this person, but this isn't a child-free person with regrets. This is a childless person whose life never turned out the way they wanted it to, and it's heartbreaking, obviously, but a very different position to what someone like me will be in at 38, because I'm making a choice to I'm not making a choice not want that, I just don't want that, you know? Yeah, words. Final couple of comments I want to look at are this one that says, no, I keep waiting for this regret to happen. I'm going on 40, so I doubt it's coming. I don't want to be a parent to anyone or anything right now. I don't enjoy caretaking. Even a pet is not enjoyable to me. I don't like caring for my I don't like caring for plants. My Tamagotchi died, and I only knew because my mum found it under some clothes in a closet because I threw it in there after getting tired of hearing it beep at me. Should regret set in and I suddenly want to take care of another human, I could always be a foster parent or a mentor to older kids. And I love that, and I think it's something that a lot of people forget about. Just because maybe you do regret not having kids, or maybe because you choose not to have kids or stuff like that, it doesn't mean you aren't giving back to people in life. There's still so much you can do, there are still ways you can look after people and nurture people and care for them, and there's still so much you can do to help people. Maybe more options and opportunities for things to do than if you had biological kids, you know? And finally, the very last comment is from someone who I love. They can see all sides of this. The people I know that are over 50 without kids are living their best life. I'm super stoked we have a daughter, but that's because I really like her as well as love her. You might have a kid you gel with, you might have a total nightmare. It's a crapshoot. Looking back, you never know what you might have missed, good or bad. And again, I like this, and I think it's a good balanced look at things. Some people love not having kids, some people don't. I think ultimately it's not about whether you have kids or not that makes you happy, and that's the whole point that I wanted to get across with this video and reading these posts from real people. It's not about whether you have kids or not, it's about whether you manage to fulfill your own goals or not, you know? If your goal is to have kids and you have them, chances are you might be happy. If your goal is to not have kids and you don't have them, chances are you're going to be happy. But if your goal is to do one or the other and you don't achieve that, then chances are you're going to be miserable and have regrets. Of course, there could be regrets either way, but they're less likely. But that's kind of life, isn't it? It's all a gamble. And the ultimate thing that I want to get across is to figure out what's right for you and follow that path. Don't have people shaming you or guilting you into doing one thing or another. Don't have people who tell you, oh, you're gonna definitely feel this way or whatever, because it might not happen. You need to figure it out for yourself. And yeah, that's kind of mostly what I have to say on this. But thank you for watching today. If you did like this video, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I don't just cover child-free stuff, but I also cover lots of feminist topics, sciencey topics, history topics. I review a lot of books and poetry and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a bit of a giggle. If you'd like to check out my new merch, you can do. I've got some really cool new designs available now over on my Teespring store. And yeah, I appreciate your time, your support, your everything. So thank you a lot, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. I'm gonna go out to dinner now and wear my fancy dress and then maybe go dancing, because why not? It's a Saturday. I haven't been out on a Saturday night in so long. I'm scared it's gonna be busy and noisy, but I think it'll be okay. I've got Kieran with me, I've got my earplugs. I'll be good. I got this. Alright, good night everyone, or good morning, or whatever time of day. Bye. Have a lovely rest of your day. I'm so bad at this.